Welcome back, everyone. So in this S3 ICT class, we're going to continue talking about selectors. Now we're going to talk about another type of selector, which is ID selectors. Okay, and then we'll try to distinguish that to show the difference between this one and class selectors, which we discussed in the previous recording. Okay, now what we can do now is just to make this difference clear. So we can apply an ID selector. You can go into your HTML file and look for the H1. Look for a line like this. Remember, we're still working with the bacon file. Look for H1 and type in ID equal sign. Then you have within the quotation marks, type in heading. Okay. Once you've done that, you can go into your CSS file and create a new section. You can create a new section called ID selectors. So let me show you here in my bacon HTML. This is what I did, like I told you. Within the H1 tag, type in ID and all the rest. Be careful with your spelling. Okay, so then move on to your CSS file. Now here in my CSS file, you can create a section and a divider like this. As you can see, it's just a comment tag. Okay, so we need to target that heading in the HTML file. So within your CSS file, under the heading ID selectors, under the section heading ID selectors, type in the hash, this sign, the hashtag or the pound sign plus heading, and then all the rest is pretty much the same as the other CSS rules that we've seen before. So you have the curly braces, the attribute, colon, value, semicolon, closing curly brace. So if you save your CSS and you refresh your browser, take a look at what appears. So if I go first, I'll go back to my CSS to show you. So this is what I typed in. I'm targeting the heading there. Sorry, I'm targeting the heading. I specify an attribute and the value. Now I need to save that and go to my web page. I'm going to refresh this. And as you can see, the color of the H1 has changed. It's now white according to this more specific styling. Okay, if you remember, just let me go back. You need the ID within that particular HTML element tag. Okay, and then you go into your CSS, you target it in your CSS file by using the pound sign and that very word, that ID that you gave to that particular element, which in this case is H1. Okay, the attribute with regard to the element that you want to style and how you want to style it, and the end result is this. That shows you that it has worked. Okay, the H1 is now styled according to the rule with the ID selector. But you see that there is in your CSS file, you still have an earlier H1 styling, but it's it's overridden by the more specific one. Okay, so that's the reason, because it's a more specific kind of styling. That's why that earlier H1 styling has been overridden. If you take a look, it looks like this there. See this? This is your earlier and more general um, H1 styling, but this has actually been canceled. And you can even see that in the on the web page itself. So this has been canceled by this more specific styling. Okay. So if you go to your web page and then right click on it, and remember choose inspect in the menu, um, and then under the tab elements on the right hand side, if you click on the HTML line that contains the H1, and then you look at the left hand side, you will see that the H1 styling, the more general one, has been crossed out. It would look like this. Okay, if I go to the web page, okay, right click, inspect. Okay, I'm here. I click on the H1. Okay, remember elements tab, click on the H1, and this is what it shows me. This is precisely what has happened. The earlier, more general styling has been cancelled. Okay, why is that? Because you have this other styling, the more specific. Okay, and you would have the same effect on other elements. So, for instance, in the what I actually did here is that remember that I removed I commented out the styling I gave to the image, the background color of the image, and I changed it by using a class selector in the previous recording. So if if I remove the comment tags and let that happen, again, let that be applied. So I'll show you. So this is, I'm in my CSS file, on my Bacon CSS. I commented this out before. This is the as you can see there, it refers to the image element. I put it in within comment tags. I'll remove the comment tags now. I'll save that and then I'll return to my web page. I'll hit refresh. Okay, what do we see here? Let me just remove the spec. Okay, so basically nothing has changed. This still takes on this particular image still takes on the styling that was determined by me using a color of still black. So nothing has changed, even though if the background color is supposed to be blue of all images. Okay, and if we click on inspect, takes a while. Okay, I'm using the Chrome developer tool. Click on that and image the bacon. As you can see, the more general one has been cancelled, while the class styling is being applied. It's the same thing as with the H1. Okay, that's the only point I wanted to make. Okay, so we already did this. We took a look at, we removed the comment tags from the image rule in the CSS file, and we saved the file and we took a look at the web page, and we saw that the more specific styling using a class selector is still being applied, regardless of the fact that there was an earlier broader styling. Okay, so this shows you the similarities, one of the similarities between class and ID selectors, namely that they're more specific. Okay, so that's one similarity, but the big difference is that if you ask the question, when do you use one and when do you use the other? When do you use class selectors? When do you use ID selectors? The one big difference between the two is that ID selectors you can only have one instance of a particular ID. Okay, and what is the ID that we used before? It's this. Remember, ID heading, and then we targeted that in this way, so you can only use heading here once, and as you will see, h1 can only have one ID, as you will see later on. I'll try to explain. So I cannot use the same thing here for another element. In contrast, I can apply the bacon class to any other element in an HTML file. So what does that mean? That means that it would be best to use an ID selector for applying one specific style to one specific element that appears only once on a particular web page. So for instance, if you have a large H1, which I suppose on a particular web page appears only once, okay? You use class selectors if you want to group together, different but related elements, and you want them to look the same, okay, on your web page. So that's one way of deciding which one you use, class selectors or ID selectors. Okay, so I hope that is clear. I'm going to end the recording here and I'll continue in another one later.